righty, folks. I am back for another chapter reading of Aether Bound, The Rise of Lilith, Book 1. I got my hair cut. What do you think? I think it's kind of cute. I'll probably never straighten it like this again. Well, there's already a little curl in the back, huh? Uh, Side note, whatever. Okay. So we are on to chapter 11 and continuing the story. And now we're getting into Aegir's Hall. Here we go. Chapter 11. One would imagine that an underwater kingdom would be, well, wet, I suppose, like King Triton's palace in The Little Mermaid. Fish would calmly swim by, maybe singing a happy tune. You'd expect to see seaweed waving gently in the current, or maybe coral structures with mermaids gathering in the dappled light from the surface, their shell bras covering their private bits, or at least the human bits. However, this was nothing like that. Despite the fact that I had entered from the water, I found myself in a dry hall bustling with activity. There wasn't a drop of water in sight. Not even my black work pants were wet. How had I gotten here? I remembered walking into the ocean, surrendering to the demons, and then I was here. No doors, no windows, no entrance that I could see of any kind. It was as if I had simply popped into existence in the middle of some sort of elaborate Halloween party. Men and women paraded the brilliant gold floor, holding cups made of animal horn, or pint glasses, or beer steins. There were even a few martini glasses and cut crystal Marie Antoinette coupes. A woman dressed in a Victorian bustled gown was bent over at the waist, laughing so hard, tears were streaming down her face. Apparently, the man with the bright red beard and fur cloak had said something funny. In another corner, a guy who looked like he could have been a floor performer at Caesar's Palace had his arm around the shoulders of a man dressed in navy blues. There was even a woman wearing a cheongsam toasting a heavily tattooed man wearing nothing but a thin bit of fabric around his nether regions. The space itself was all dark carved wood and hanging lanterns, with actual flames flickering behind golden lampshades. They clearly weren't worried about the fire marshal coming in for a visit. Pillars held up the ceiling at least 5 stories above my head. A balcony ran around the edges of the room and looked down on the happenings of the pub below, while a network of bridges connected the pillars and allowed people to move freely from one side of the room to the other. The pillars and undersides of the bridges had been carved with images of sea serpents and sharks, octopuses and whales, schools of fish, and turtles the size of minivans. The banisters and framing pieces had been shaped into intricate knots and fishermen's nets. It was like a bigger, classier, more polished version of the trident. And I have to say, I approved. "Welcome to Aegir's Hall," a booming voice announced. A push from behind had me turning in indignation. A sallow-faced man with sunken cheeks and puffy eyes wrapped a thin arm around my shoulders. He looked sick, worse than any of the drug-addled new admits I'd met at the Institute. His pained smile revealed receded gums and yellowed teeth that I worried were going to fall right out of his head. I shrugged away, putting some distance between myself and the revolting creature. "Grab a drink and join the party," the demon encouraged in the same booming voice. The sound didn't seem to originate from his mouth, which hardly moved, but from the center of his chest. Despite his sickly appearance, the power reverberated in each syllable. He was a man, and yet not. Though he felt solid to the touch, he emanated an aura of spiritual energy that I'd only ever felt from the demons. The demon man swept an arm toward a bar in the middle of the room and curled into a partial bow, pointing me in the direction of the biggest bar I'd ever seen. A row of at least 50 taps wrapped around a giant golden brewer's vat, the likes of which I couldn't possibly exist in the real world. Casks of wine, their wood spigots inserted and ready, had been stacked 3 high on one side of the shelves of every imaginable liquor line. Excuse me. Casks of wine, their wood spigots inserted and ready, had been stacked 3 high on one side, and shelves of every imaginable liquor lined the walkway behind. This was not what I had been expecting. I wasn't sure what exactly I had expected, but this definitely wasn't it. Where are we? I asked, finally finding my voice. Welcome to Aegir's Hall, the demon repeated. I glanced sideways at the creature and lifted an eyebrow. Grab a drink and join the party. Apparently, that was all the thing could say. Maybe this one wasn't so much a demon as a golem. I'd read about them at some point. Creatures created from clay or stone and imbued with the spark of life. More substantial than the spirits I was used to seeing, but also less intelligent. He didn't seem to notice or take offense to my inspection. At a loss for what else to do, I let him guide me toward a seat at the bar. His cheeks spread into an unnerving grin before he turned away to greet the next new arrival. What's your preference? Unlike the host who'd taken me to my seat, the bartender looked like a regular guy. Blonde hair, blue eyes, broad shoulders. He was almost too good looking. Too sculpted and perfect. It made me question his humanity as much as, if not more than, the sallow-faced host. It made me miss Silas with his unkempt hair and ratty fedora. My throat tightened and I clenched my hands together on the bar top. I'd abandoned him at the top of the stairs, screamed at him like a possessed banshee. He wouldn't want anything to do with me now that I'd exposed him to the truth of who I really was. Further proof that I couldn't even hope for any kind of relationship with him or anyone. I was alone but for Ezra, which was exactly why I needed to find him. I didn't want anything to drink. I needed to focus, but I couldn't let this guy know that. I had to play along, pretend I was one of the guests, at least for a little while. What do you have? Aegir makes the best mead in Aether. Nothing in Gaia even comes close. But we're here to give you whatever you desire. Ale, wine, a Mai Tai. The demon winked, as if he knew exactly who I was and where I came from. My heart lurched as he continued. Name it, and I'll make it, and your cup will never fall empty. I looked away, trying to hide my shock by pretending to examine the vat behind him. If he knew who I was, I had to pray that he'd keep my secret. And if he didn't, if it had just been a good guess, then I couldn't reveal anything. Play it cool, keep my head, find Ezra. That was it. I took a cleansing breath and focused. The bartender glanced over his shoulder, following my gaze. Wider than any brewing vat I'd ever seen, the structure had to be at least 20 yards across. The bottom actually extended down into the floor and several feet above his head. It looked like it was made entirely of gold, but if so, it would be the heaviest, most expensive brewing vat I'd ever created. I couldn't even begin to imagine where all that precious metal would have come from. Twisting, knotted vines and stylistic animals of all types had been etched into the rim and along the support braces that held up the sides. Between the supports, a Viking longboat sailed on a raging sea while a larger-than-life woman wielding a fisherman's net pulled the men overboard into the depths. Glancing toward the right, between the next set of supports, a woman with long, flowing hair crouched on a rocky beach, her hand outstretched toward a dolphin with its head out of the water. Beneath the waves in the distance, a bearded merman carrying a trident watched them. The stories of the sea god and his wife etched into the heart of Aegir's Hall. That one there, I pointed at the dolphin, looks like Poseidon and Amphitrite. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but we're going to go with it. Amphitrite. You know your myths! My mother read them to us as bedtime stories. I decided not to mention that she'd ruined bedtime forever when she'd sliced my arm and abandoned us for the ocean. I've never heard of Aegir. Most of the ocean myths are based on the adventures of Aegir. I can regale you with a few more of his tales, the true stories, while you enjoy your drink, if you'd like. Thanks. I turned away from the vat and searched through the laughing and dancing patrons out on the floor. But I think I'll go look for my friend. I almost said brother. That would have been a disastrous mistake. If they suspected I was here with an ulterior motive, they would definitely try to stop me. Better to keep my information to myself as long as possible. Your friend, huh? The corner of the demon's mouth pulled up in a teasing smile. I could be your friend. I lifted an eyebrow. I'd seen Ty make the same move on the women at the bar. Not very creative. I bet you say that to all the ladies. Laughter erupted from the demon's throat, surprisingly warm and somehow comforting. It made me want to laugh with him, and I couldn't stop the smile from turning up the corners of my own lips. While you're not wrong, that doesn't make it a lie, the demon replied after his chuckles quieted. He wiped a towel across the shiny, varnished wood of the bar, keeping his hands busy just as I would have done. Let me get you something to drink, and then I'll help you find your friend. This place is endless, if you haven't noticed, but everyone passes through here first. He was right. I'd been dropped into the center of the room. There were no doors, no windows, and yet it wasn't stifling. The room was crowded, but extended so far into the distance I couldn't be sure I'd even seen the end. I had no idea where to start looking for Ezra. I was going to need some help, and the bartender was the first person to talk to me with any sense of rationality. And yet, it wasn't so different from the Trident. The patrons were here to party. This was a haven, a release, just like the surfers and the frat boys and the bachelorettes that came to the Trident. This was a place to let loose and forget. My shoulders relaxed. I knew this space. I knew this atmosphere, and I knew his job. He was a bartender, just like me. It was the bartender's job to make their customers comfortable, to ease their burdens, to have some fun. I could work with this. I guess I'll have the mead. Always go with the specialty of the house, right? Absolutely. Of course, now you have to decide which one. Aegir brews more than 20 varieties, plus seasonal offerings. I snorted and sat back in my seat. I didn't know anything about mead. I had no idea how to choose or where to start. What's your favorite on the lighter end? Not too strong? The demon tapped a finger against his nose. I gotcha. He pulled a crystal snifter from beneath the countertop and turned to the row of taps attached to the vat behind him. He wiggled his fingers across the various handles, finally grabbing a purple flower with 5 heart-shaped petals. Golden liquid the color of an early winter California sunset splashed into the glass. He only filled the snifter halfway before pulling it away, giving it a swirl and sliding across the counter toward me. Give that a try. This is our sand dune show mead, made of honey from bees who have exclusively harvested their pollen from the beach sand verbena grown on Aegir's island estate. I swirled the glass on the counter, fingers around at the base of the stem, just like Gabby had shown me with wine. I didn't know much, but I figured I could pretend. After a few seconds, I lifted the glass to my nose, sniffed, then took a sip. Flavor burst to life in my mouth. My eyes closed without conscious thought, better to appreciate the sensation. Not quite dry, but not really sweet either. The layers were complex and fruity, with floral notes that only enhanced the overall experience. I rolled the liquid around my tongue, letting it coat every taste bud before swallowing. A lingering sweetness on the finish. Wow, it was all I could say. It certainly was not what I would have expected in the demon realm? Hell? Where was this really? I know, right? The demon grinned. Aegir's the original master brewer. Aegir? You really are new here, aren't you? Well then, let me start with the basic orientation while you enjoy your first drink in our domain. That would be great. You're currently sitting in Aegir's Hall, the biggest, best party in all of Aether and Gaia combined. Aether? The unseen spirit world, born of heaven and desire and home to the Aesir, the elemental gods. Gaia is the seen world, Earth. Ah. I took another sip of the mead, hoping the drink would somehow help me understand. So what you're saying is that we're not really here. No, you're here all right. At least your spirit or soul or aura, whatever you want to call it, is sitting here at this bar in Aegir's Hall. I'm guessing your body is floating at the bottom of Gaia's sea, though. Excuse me? You're dead, sweetheart. Welcome to your chosen afterlife. That's it for chapter 11. Stay tuned next week for chapter 12. And to make sure you never miss an episode, make sure you hit the subscribe and the little bell dingy button and get all your notifications and all of that stuff while you're at it. And if you're interested in following along or picking up the second book in the series, make sure you visit my website at meganhaskell.com. See you next week.